If you are confused over why the US and Israel suddenly attacked Iran and why many non-related Middle East countries are being attacked as well, watch on as I simplify everything so that by the end of this video, you will understand why this is so serious. So, you might have already heard that on 28 February 2026, the US, together with Israel, launched an attack on various areas in Iran using missiles, drones, and fighter jets. Their targets were reportedly focused on Iran's political and military leaders, their compounds, and Iran's nuclear and missile infrastructure. Now, this is one of the largest escalations in the Middle East for decades. I know it's confusing because you might have read about Israel's attack on Iran in April and October 2024, and Israel's and US attack on Iran in June 2025. Why is this latest one more serious? It's not because the US and Israel attacked at the same time. It's because the objective has changed. And unlike previous attacks, Iran is now stepping up its retaliation against the US and Israel, making the entire Middle East more unstable and raising the risk of severe repercussions across the region. Watch on to the end to know why. But before anything, you need to know what led to this. First and foremost, you need to know a little about the history between the US and Iran. Also, this is a very simplified version, so if you want to know more, you can check out the links I provided in the description. You see, after World War II, a British company controlled Iran's oil, and it took quite a bit of profit from the oil. Iran workers were not happy, and in 1951, a new democratically elected leader was elected in Iran. He nationalized Iran's oil industry, so this meant Iran's oil belonged to Iran. The UK wasn't happy, and at the same time, the US was worried that Iran would turn into a communist country. Therefore, the US and UK orchestrated a coup that overthrew the Iran's prime minister in 1953, and they installed someone who is a close ally with the US and UK as the leader. So, as you can tell, the Iranians didn't really like the US and UK. Well, that went on for 26 years until 1979, when the Iranians started a revolution that toppled the US installed leader. Since then, the diplomatic relations between the US and Iran has been severed and never restored. It did not help that in 1980, when Iraq invaded Iran, the US backed Iraq, and in 2002, President George W. Bush labeled Iran part of the axis of evil, which then comprised states like Iraq and North Korea. And their relations strained even further when Trump took office. Now, this brings us closer to what's happening. You see, the US has been accusing Iran of pursuing nuclear weapons, which Iran has repeatedly denied, claiming that their nuclear activities are peaceful and not for nuclear weapons. The US imposed sanctions on Iran, and in 2015, everything looked promising when Iran agreed to limit their nuclear activities in exchange for sanction relief. But in 2018, Trump withdrew from the deal, and their relationship got worse. In 2020, the US assassinated Iran's most powerful military commander when he was in Iraq, leading to Iran striking US bases in Iraq. Then, in April 2024, Israel assassinated an Iranian military commander in Syria, leading to Iran striking back at Israel. But almost all their attempts were intercepted. In October, Iran struck Israel again, and Israel hit back, destroying more of Iran's air defense systems. And in June 2025, Israel suddenly struck Iranians' nuclear facilities, military bases, and infrastructure, claiming it was to destroy their nuclear capabilities. The US then joined in the attack. Once again, Iran struck back, leading to a 12-day war that ended with a ceasefire. So yes, if you think about it, these strikes, while serious, lasted for a short while with no serious retaliation from Iran, and with Iran mainly losing some of their military or nuclear compounds. The US reasons for the attacks have often been that Iran is building nuclear weapons, while Israel's reasons are that Iran is backing a group that attacked Israel, although it should be noted that their relationships have always been very hostile. But what really led to the 28 February attacks, and why is it much more serious? Well, what you might not know is that the writing might have been on the wall. Since 2024, Iran's economy had not been doing well. However, it got worse since the June 2025 attacks, with more sanctions imposed on them. It got worse in late 2025 when their currency experienced a sharp drop in value against the USD and a 42% inflation in December, with food prices rising 72%. This led to protests in the country, which started from 28 December 2025. It was then reported that the authorities used live fire on protesters, with human rights activists in Iran confirming at least 7,000 deaths, while the Iran government confirmed 3,117 deaths. On the other hand, Trump said 32,000 people were killed. So, why is the writing on the wall? You see, every year, the US president will give a major speech outlining what he intends to do for the year. It's called the State of the Union. This year's speech was delivered on 24 February, and he spoke a bit about Iran. Firstly, he claimed that the US has ended Iran's nuclear weapons programs through the June 2025 attacks, but alleged that Iran wanted to start all over again. He claimed that Iran had already developed missiles that can threaten Europe and our bases overseas, and they are working to build missiles that will soon reach the United States of America. But these claims are disputed by fact-checkers. Now, he has said that despite the fact that the US and Iran are still having talks, and Iran's foreign minister saying in an ex-post hours ago that Iran would, under no circumstances, ever develop a nuclear weapon. Trump then spoke about the protests in Iran. Some analysts compare his speech with George W. Bush 2003 State of the Union speech before he started the Iraq War, kind of updating the visual dictionary of fear, in which he's making claims now so as to justify the actions later. However, the attacks on 28 February were still surprising because remember, talks were still ongoing. In fact, on 27 February, there was a breakthrough as Oman's foreign minister said that Iran had agreed not to stockpile enriched uranium and to allow full IAEA verification. So why? Why the attacks and what's US and Israel's objective? If you're looking to advertise your business in this channel, we can help you. There are guaranteed views and many big brands have trusted us. Just click on the link in the description. Unlike previous attacks, whereby the US often said that the reason was due to Iran's pursuit of nuclear weapons, while Israel often said it was to defend themselves from Iran-backed groups that attacked Israel, this time, the objective is different. While Trump still mentioned the same reasons, he added one more reason for this latest attack. He wanted a regime change, which means he wanted the government to change. He called the regime a
vicious group of very hard, terrible people
that endangers the US and their bases overseas, claiming that Iran is
the world's #1 state sponsor of terror and just recently killed tens of thousands of its own citizens on the street as they protested.
He didn't say that the US would be taking over Iran. Instead, he told the Iranians to take over the country after this attack is over. Israel appears to have the same objective. So, what's the attack? On 28 February, at about 9:30 AM in Iran, the US and Israel launched missiles and airstrikes in various parts of Iran, hitting over 1,000 targets in Iran across the campaign. It was a swift attack, with the attacks falling on Iran's political and military compounds. For example, an airstrike on a meeting of Iran's Defense Council killed Iran's Army Chief of Staff and Defense Minister. During the attacks, it's reported that civilians were injured and killed as well. I'm not going to list out the numbers or what the latest attacks are all about, as it's ongoing, so by the time you watch this, it might be different. What's reported is that Trump said the war could last for a month or so. The key thing is this: Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, was killed as well. This is an important turning point, as he was the leader for over 3 decades. But why are we reading news about Dubai being attacked as well? If you remember, in the last few confrontations between the US, Israel, and Iran, the strikes were mainly between them. However, this time is different. Iran's retaliation has been unprecedented in scope, striking across the region. Other than firing back at Israel, they have also fired missiles at the UAE, Qatar, and several nearby regions. But here's the thing, they are firing at the US bases in these regions, as these regions have US bases. The reason why you are reading news about civilians in these regions hearing explosions or injured or killed is that these strikes might have hit civilian infrastructure as well, or during the interception of the missiles or drones, it led to civilians being hit by the shrapnel. This is why the entire region is now very unstable, as the retaliation is widening further. As of now of recording, the strikes are still ongoing, with people in the regions advised to stay home. On Iran's side, a leadership council has been tasked to fulfill the supreme leader role. So, what are the Iranians' response? Well, it depends on where you get your news from, because it's like sending a reporter to a hospital. They can report from the mortuary about the number of deaths, or from the nursery about the number of newborns. Therefore, there are two main responses by the Iranians. The first is that Iranians celebrated with joy, while the second is that they are mourning the death of the supreme leader and calling for revenge. It's unknown what will happen next. However, what we know is that a number of flights, especially those in the Middle East, have been delayed or cancelled, and airspaces of certain regions are virtually empty. Singapore has advised all Singaporeans to defer all travel to Israel, Iran, and the Middle East region. And as expected, oil prices rose sharply, and prices of gold also surged. Now, what's next is unknown. This is developing, so do subscribe to us or follow us on Instagram if you like bite-sized current affairs content. To know more about the June 2025 attack, watch this. And thank you for spending almost 9 minutes with me. I really appreciate it and hope you learned something.